Hello, hello. Jenny Bowling here with Pivotal Real Estate Investments and the Pivot to Prosperity podcast. And today we are doing an interview of a local legend and pivotal person, 2 in 1. And his name is Trevor Hall. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being available. I came to you, I guess.
It's my pleasure.
We are in his awesome office. He is with Colliers, and he has an amazing career. He's the executive vice president of land services in Central Florida. And the background would be many of the area's larger and more complicated land transactions have occurred due to Trevor's efforts. The needs and goals of the client, together with the unique qualities of each assignment, direct his efforts. As listing agent, a variety of value enhancing efforts have procured sales at the highest and best values for his clients. He has successfully pursued numerous land assemblage efforts. Early on, Trevor learned the business and became a top producer with Florida Ranch Lands, the firm that assembled Disney World. He and his father then worked together as broker owners of Lambert Smith Hampton's Orlando office. Many of Orlando's best agents joined them and built the sales volume and property management portfolio. He then engineered the firm's sale to the Pizzuti organization and repositioned himself in landowner representation. In 1998, he joined Colliers and has thrived as an integral team member and executive managing director of land services. Mm-hmm. Now, on the professional accomplishments is the main things that you noted, but I know a lot more you could note. Colliers Land Advisory, Urban Land Institute. He's been involved in that for a number of years, right? How many? Do you know how many years?
Dates back 20 years anyway.
Yeah.
I've been here 25.
Yeah. And they're the premier organization on land development, I would say.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And NAIOP, he's past president. That's you say what it stands for exactly.
National Association of Industrial and, in my opinion, other properties, because there's retail and residential in there as well.
Yeah.
In addition to industrial office.
Right. Okay. And then top producer, Florida Ranch Lands from 1975 to 1990. Quite a feat. That's a long time.
It was great and a nice run.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bachelor's degree in economics with honors from Michigan State University.
Spartans.
You follow the games?
Can tell. It's been a tough year for the Spartans.
Former real estate instructor at University of Central Florida, mm-hmm. Continuing education. Current and past community involvement with Central Florida YMCA, the Development Committee, Mensa. Go ahead and explain what that is.
That's supposed to be for the top 2% intelligence-wise. Now, the good news is they don't retest. I took one exam. It got me in, and I've paid the dues every year.
His memory is good enough. I would say he's still there. Eagle Scout and former Scoutmaster, musical fundraiser and founder of Gazebros. Founder of NIOP's diversity and equitable access efforts.
Right.
Awesome. Well, you have a lot of
it's been a wonderful career. You know, Orlando's just such a good town, and I've fit in so well here. The best advice I ever got long ago was to represent important landowners, and I've been doing that for close to 50 years now. And now I drive through some areas and shudder because nothing but sprawl has shown up on the ranch that I sold or whatever. But
right.
There've been a lot of wonderful transactions over the years, and been able to do it without ever having to litigate anything ever.
Really?
Yeah, never been sued.
That is astounding. Yeah. Right.
I've seen litigation just tear people up, and it's never happened to me.
Right. Well, so what would you say was I'm going to ask you your most challenging and fastest, easiest deals?
Most challenging was probably the South Chase, 3,200 acres. Ranchlands wanted to fire me because I had done something arrogant, and I pleaded with them to stick around, and they let me stay. And then the following week, I got a call from the chairman of the board of Amarada Hess that owned 3,200 acres here, and I got a chance to list it for sale. The president and I worked up a seller's draft of contract, went out to a handful of good developers, picked out Richland, Jack Bray. And we closed that sale at close to 29 million. I think we started at 25. Every couple of months or every quarter, terms would change. But he knew that he had all the time he needed to accomplish the development of regional impact, which was brand new back then. And we never had to amend the agreement. And he closed,
That's amazing.
yeah, it was just a really good combination of the right piece and the right player and his organization. And then we just closed a sale that took less than 2 months next to the Pulse Foundation. I handled the 0.63 acres that Craig Mateer just bought yesterday or this past week. And that will give the city a tremendous variation as to what they can do with the Pulse Memorial. I think it's just going to be a very good occurrence because there's an empty office building sitting there and parking and empty land, and it will really enhance what they can do with that memorial site.
Great. Yeah, that's been a very
And that
tricky.
was 60 days start to finish.
Yeah, that's rare. Well, great. Well, so your tenure with Florida Ranchlands, how many years was that actually?
I was there 15. I showed up in January 75, just as the Disney bust was in full swing. The OPEC fuel crisis had hit. Gas that I pumped in college for 30 cents a gallon was now $1, and you couldn't always get it. And so the 80% of the people that were coming to Disney World were all coming by car, and they couldn't come here. And so that's when Harris Rosen bought a whole bunch of hotels. So did my father's clients. And you couldn't give away a piece of land. So I got a chance to represent the Pillsburies, William Clay Ford, the General Mills Bell family, wealthy guy out of Indianapolis that had gotten stuck with land here, and they hated the broker that had sold it to them. And so I got a chance to sell the 1,250 acres in Osceola County that became Little England and Florida, Zenerida, a little piece, 2,000 acres of Hunters Creek, and then 2,800 acres up in Seminole County that became the Yankee Lake Preserve up there. There's a large utility facility there. And I just happened to be the tall, smart white guy with just the right business card at just the right time. And so the lesson is that when there's adversity, there's opportunity. And I was at the right place at the right time and really enjoyed those relationships and succeeding, getting those people their money back out of the land that they had invested in here during the Disney boom, which was a boom up until 74.
You don't hear many people talk about Disney and bust in the same breath or the same sentence.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
But that's when Harris Rosen bought, some of his 4,000 plus hotel rooms. The lenders were taking the keys back and were willing to just pay the back taxes, pay the insurance bill, hand them the keys, and reduce the mortgage. And that's how Harris got his start. He grew up poor in Hell's Kitchen and came through the Navy.
Really?
And then, Colgate is but he got a hotel and restaurant institutional management degree, worked for Disney for a while, and then the Disney bus came, and that was his opportunity to become a hotelier.
Wow.
He's a great story. He really is. He's just part of the fabric of Orlando that I think is so admirable.
Do you stay in touch?
A little bit. Last time I saw him, I complimented him on his healthcare system that he has for all of his employees,
right?
And he's really proud of that. And he said, "Yeah, we just added 1,000 people in Osceola County." And I thought that was just the right attitude, right?
Right. He helps a lot of people.
No doubt.
Yeah, that's great. And speaking of shout outs, any other shout outs you want to do while we're talking here?
I'll have to think.
Okay. So you have several things on your list there. I want to give you a chance to bring those up in the order you want.
Okay. I was talking to some college students not too long ago about seeking a mentor. And I advised them that they should just follow my big sister's advice, which is it's just as easy to marry rich as it is to marry poor. So if you're shopping for a mentor, really helps if they've got 300 acres and some family money to work with, like mine did. Reach high on a mentor, and that really helps. I'm amused by all the talk about artificial intelligence, AI. To me, some of that seems like artificial ignorance. Okay. And I want there to be, ACS, what I call ACS, which is artificial common sense. Because it just seems to me that some of what comes out of the computer is nonsense. I think it's important to volunteer well. I have been active in NAIOP. They helped me design my first building, and that was so helpful. It still looks great 43 years later. And I introduce myself sometimes as a real estate tycoon, which is a reformed developer with a sense of humor, the way I. Okay. But the process of being a developer and overseeing building 4 buildings as a partner and then another 9 with where I was president of the landowner was just such a worthwhile experience for me in all aspects. So I really enjoyed that as much as anything I've ever done. And then I think it's important to volunteer well. Find things that you're passionate about. I was raised near the YMCA and was an Indian guide and active in summer, programs and this and that. And so the YMCA here has been so instrumental in so many lives. And I was one of the ones that came up with the idea of Safe Start. Dr. Phillips Money, Infant Swimming Research were the folks, and the YMCA had all the pools, but they teach young kids, 6 months old and up, how to turn over and float on their back. And so there are over 100 letters in the file at the YMCA of parents and grandparents whose offspring, some kid, is falling in the water and they find them floating face up, breathing, right? And so I just, one of those things, being at the right place at the right time over a glass of wine, right?
Yeah.
That worked like a champ.
Yeah.
With Dr. Phillips. And
the man himself.
No, it was with Jim Ferber had just joined the YMCA, and it was Jim Hinson at the Y, but Tom Ross was on the board then as well, the attorney. That was before he lost his eyesight. And he and I were the ones that came up with the idea and put it together initially. And it's been a wonderful program, and that's the sort of thing that in extracurricular activities, if you can make a difference in this town, it seems to me that that's of real value. In my line of work, I have to deal with attorneys a lot. And I'm fond of saying that in terms of ethics, Orlando is the un-Miami. When I look at law firms, I think, let's see, Willie Ackerman, Stephen T. Dean, Charlie Gray, John Lowndes. That's the first half of the alphabet. Those are 4 locally sourced law firms that are just excellent to work with, and they're highly ethical and highly capable. And I just think that that's part of the strength of this town is the quality of our law firms here. And the fact, I was talking to some folks last night at a function, and I asked a number of people if they'd ever been shaken down for a bribe. And there was one such story, and that public official spent some time in jail. It's just kind of the way we run things here. You got to have high ethics to do well here. And then I'm also fond of pointing out that in my business in particular, but I think in virtually all businesses, what you want is the optimal outcome. And the way I get to that is I try to project ahead 5 years and stand there envisioning the best possible outcome of the activity, and then look back toward today, standing there 5 years from now or whenever, and just say, "Boy, I sure am glad we did that back then." Then it's simple. All you need to do is that, right? But it's a complex equation to the left of the equal sign. Optimal outcomes off to the right, but we have to define those variables and solve for same and avoid the times 0 nullifier, the showstopper. And if done properly, you get an optimal outcome, and my clients are served. An example is, I was on the Orange County Charter Review Commission. Roger Chapin was on the commission. I had heard that Mears, the company that he was working with, had failed to buy a piece of land down southwest of here. And I had heard about this mobile home park, really defunct 1938 vintage mobile home park next to Cowboys on the trail that it was going into foreclosure. And so I brought a picture of it to him. That started a 20 parcel acquisition effort that I undertook. And we assembled over 20 acres there between Rio Grande and the trail on the north side of Grand Street. And just as Mears was about to write a $25 million check for their new transportation center for their taxi business, Uber came along, right? So we all took a breath, and I listed the property for sale, and we ended up selling it for that Amazon final mile facility that is there. Complete switch from what was planned, but it's a situation where you have to adapt to the existing conditions and make good decisions for the client.
Ooh, that was a close one too.
Yeah, that really was. And I guess that leads me to one of my favorite sayings. Years ago, Nils Schweitzer was the preeminent architect here in town. He was a Frank Lloyd Wright disciple and had done a lot of the work down at Florida Southern College and elsewhere here in that style, was involved in the Orlando Library redo. And on the wall, as you walked into his office, there was a nice big sign. It just said, "God is in the details." And what he meant by that is that if you pay attention to the details, you can get a righteous outcome. But if you ignore the details, it could be devilish. And the old saying is, the devil's in the details. I think that's crap. It's God is in the details, and you got to pay attention, and really do it right. And then in terms of the economy that we have here, this is now my 6th correction in Central Florida once it gets going, and it too is different. Every time there are such different characteristics, the Disney bust, the 1990, which was sort of the overbuild, .com bust, et cetera. This one, there's selective debt instruments out there that are going to be troublesome next year, no question. But it's not time for the Resolution Trust Corporation or Amresco or any. We don't have mass panic, especially in this town, since Florida is a tax haven, right? We have no state income tax, and you don't pay a state tax here. And wonderful climate, wonderful business climate here, right? And so the in-migration continues. And so we are buffered as far as that goes, I think, compared with a lot of other communities around the country. Fortunate, no question about it.
Yeah.
But this one, no doubt there's some adversity out there, and there are opportunities out there. And I just, I spent a bunch of time this year as a land broker postponing sales. I'm going to have a nice year next year because it's just taken more time to get approvals and to get the capital stack squared away on any one project. But again, I say there's a lot of adversity out there right now, which means there's a lot of opportunity.
That's excellent too. Very, very true. And so you talked about the capital stack a little bit and the debt instruments. What in particular are you referring to on that?
When we're working with the senior community developer for rental apartments, they've got the ability to borrow 65% of the construction costs, straight up non-recourse financing, but that other 35% has to be covered with preferred equity, mezzanine debt, something. And a year ago when we were working on this, so a year ago when we were working with this senior housing community developer, the equity expectations were 5% or thereabouts. And we knew that they could sell the finished product stabilized for a 4% cap rate, which is 25 times net operating income. And the costs, year and a half ago hadn't gone crazy. Now, capitalization rates are damn near double. which greatly reduces the expected future value.
Mhm.
So the pro forma with all the higher costs involved, interest rate in particular, it just doesn't work. And so an awful lot of projects that we've been working on are kind of stalled, waiting for stabilization. And it's good to see a little bit of a tick down in some of the interest rates, meaning that we might be stabilizing here. And interest rates are such a blunt instrument anyway. It really does affect our business more than many. But it just seems to me as though, as a half-assed economist, I always looked at the money supply, and one of the variables in the money supply is velocity. There's no doubt velocity is dropping a little bit. There's just a little bit less activity out there, which I think will crimp the money supply and help bring about a slowdown. But again, where there's adversity, there's opportunity. And I expect to see quite a few good buys being made here in the next year, in 2024, for one reason or another. If there's a loan that's coming due that it has a 4% interest rate and you can only get 7% on the new money, somebody's going to write a check.
Right.
Somebody might get hurt, but on a case-by-case basis, my take, and understand I've been wrong before, but my take is that those case-by-case resolutions will occur. And we're ready to make some of those deals close.
Yeah, I'm convinced. And I just actually did a podcast saying that the other day as well, that I think 2024 and 25 will be a reckoning for some people that got just a little too bold. Appreciation really, well, it's been a long time since there were high interest rates, and there's been decades of no real inflation. So a lot of
I
the
had money at 11%, made money with it, but that was in
all relative, yeah,
rising tide of building values.
right.
And I didn't have the money. I had to borrow it, but I had a good source, and
Yeah.
we're making 11% on their money, and I was taking the risk.
But
But then when they
Yeah.
changed the tax law in 86, I'm still a Republican, but Reagan's policies absolutely hosed me twice, because I was already a developer in 1980 when the 81 Economic Recovery Act was passed, which gave us 15-year depreciation write-off on against ordinary income, which created a flood of supply that I did not need. I was already underway. I had the money, the buildings underway, and the land, and a capital stack. We had the ability to build those buildings. And so then in 86, after a huge oversupply had occurred or was underway, they took away all of my tax shelter. You had to have passive income. I was an active guy, I was an active investor. So it completely hosed me. And so watch out for the vagaries of the IRS.
So true.
And so when I paid off that last $1.6 million, I haven't really borrowed any money since then. I'm pretty well a reformed developer. I just don't want that personal liability.
Reform borrower anyway. You kept developing though after that.
No, I didn't.
No, that was the 80s.
Yeah,
Okay.
I built 4 buildings and then oversaw 9 more, but the 9 were not my money.
Oh, okay.
It's just president of the company that owned the land.
I see.
Part of that ranch. Part of that, my mentor's 300 acres, right?
Yeah, and so we were talking the other day. I was an appraiser in the 80s and got involved with appraising a lot of these developments after the feds came in and shut down the banks. And so the some projects that were perfectly fine went belly up, and
it was brutal.
It was, the RTC, FDIC, all of those acronyms, right? Yeah.
And RESCO.
Yeah.
But these days I get calls from appraisers on a regular basis, and I talk with them at different functions. And what I know is that comparable sales are all in the rear view mirror, but what you want to have a clear view through is the windshield. And things have changed. Values are being adjusted, and some are, I think, going to fare much better than others. And I'm fond of saying that all generalizations are false, including this one. Okay. If you're talking about commercial real estate, I want to know exactly where it is. What's the zip code? Product type, what is it? Multi-tenant office, or what is it? and how is it financed, you know? And if you have that data and what are the rents there? What are the absorptions? What are the vacancy rates in that distinct area? If you have that kind of depth of knowledge, you'll make good decisions. If you're just painting in the woods, as we used to say, it's
Yeah.
a different story altogether, you know.
So do you subscribe to some of those information services like CoStar or ALN's only
It's like a
multifamily?
river, you know.
Yeah.
I draw from it as necessary, but
No one in particular you would recommend?
no, I just hang around smart young people is what I do.
There you go. You are quite the networker. Yes, you are. What else is on your list there?
Well, I'm descended from guys who were described as being hail fellows well met. That means hearty, healthy, you know, drink a few beers, but know a lot of people. I'm a hail fellow well met this generation.
Ah, yeah,
And I'm a big fan of sense of humor. I use it as a weapon. I mean, it's a real asset for me to make people laugh. And it's just something I think is just so important to keep. You know, if I'm talking politics and I'm smiling and making them laugh and we're not agreeing, it still goes pretty well. Most people just shy away from the subject.
right,
I
right.
don't, you know, I'm a dissident, left-wing, anti-war, anti-discrimination Republican, second generation, right? I can carry that off. And I like discussing things like that without being the least bit disagreeable. It's okay if we don't agree.
Right,
We live
yeah,
in the most wonderful country where it's perfectly okay to have those disagreements.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. And something else about your past? Music?
Oh, yeah.
You can't not say that.
I was playing saxophone in about 7th or 8th grade, and someone gave me a baritone ukulele, 4-string. And I've never stopped playing since then. My favorite guitar is my next one. Thank you very much. And my band, Jack Bird and I started it with Tom Olson about 15 years ago. And we ended up practicing Tuesday nights in the gazebo right in College Park, in Albert Park there. And so we became the Gazebros. And he brought in Sheila and I brought in some Chip and a couple other guys. And we just have a blast. And we've got about 600 songs up on podcast now that we can, or on Dropbox that we can draw from. And to me, I don't do anything healthier than playing and singing with others at the same time, you know, on pitch, on the beat, good song, good lyrics. That does it for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it really helps both sides of the brain stick together.
I would say so for sure. What else do you have on your list there before I
I
ask
think
you some other questions here?
I think we got that.
Okay.
We could look at some of my current assignments. It's
Yeah, tell us about what you're working on.
we've got 113 acres up in Mims that was under contract. It came time for the guy to put money at risk. The FDOT was messing with him a little bit. He just backed out. We immediately got 5 offers from others and put it back under contract for a little more money, a little quicker closing. And that's for single family. The single family folks seem to still have a lot of steam because they have a 3 or 4 or 5 year outcome, and they know that, you know, interest rates will settle down and people will continue to move here, we think. And then we're doing a nice assemblage up in the DeLand area for a mix of retail, industrial, and medical. And that's one of those that we've had to postpone the closing out into mid-year next year on a couple of the tracks just because of the capital stack. And that particular submarket is a little bit oversupplied with big industrial buildings, and that's what we were planning to do there. But the retail piece is just really strong, so that's going to happen. And then I've always been kind of active out in the Wellness Way area south of Claremont. There's just a lot of opportunities out there, an awful lot of land sales. I've got a few of those pending. And then I'll work on anything within an hour of here. We had some real good success in cocoa. I represented a group that had taken that back from a developer 10 years ago or so, sold it to a group out of Miami for $1.3 million, sold it for them at $1.5 million to a local guy, 8th grade education, hard worker. And then Lee Morris in my office here came along, he had Amazon. And we sold that 160 acres to the developer for Amazon for 6.5 million. You know, my guy made 4 million net after taxes. He's a happy guy, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't usually get a chance to sell something 3 times, but you know, handle
You'll
it well.
do it any day, right?
Yeah. And then we got a couple of senior apartment sites that we are working on that are fairly active. We've done some storage deals. I got a live local thing pending up in Deltona. And I'm passionate about to me, rent is a 4-letter word. Seems like all of the approaches that we take to affordable housing are rent. I oppose. I think what we need is to do a really enlightened approach to attainable housing for sale and purchase. And if it's a live local thing and you've got 100 unit in 4-story, U-shaped complex with 100 units in it, costs shift from 40 of them into the penthouse and the better units, so that you've got that 40% piece covered with live local, and then arrange best possible financing, maybe using soft second mortgages where you have to live there and keep homestead exemption. But if you do that for 10 years, 40 grand goes away that you owe. If you're rented out 6 years later, you owe the 40 plus interest. But if you raise your family there and are there, for 10 years or some specified period of time, there's a real advantage. And it's tax favored because the owners write off the interest against their 1040s, and you get a $50,000 homestead exemption on your ad valorem taxes. And I'm doing more talking about it than actually doing it, but I want to see that take place. In some of these places that already have the infrastructure and the transit nearby and the water and the sewer and this and that, I'd like to plunk down a 100-unit cooperative opportunity. And the idea also is, of those 100 units, take 1,000 per each transaction and stick it in the reserves, so that when they take title and the cooperative takes over in 18 months or whenever, the contractor's off the hook completely. There's no lingering contractor liability. They own it, right? And they got 100 grand sitting there in reserves to cover one insurance policy, not 100, right? I think there's a better way. There's a better mousetrap than the way we've been doing things. And I should have my name on the Ginsburg Tower, because I've sold him at least 4 different apartment sites that are affordable for 15 years, then market rate, and sell for a whole bunch of money. I don't begrudge it. That's the plan, right? But it seems to me there's a better way, and it involves permanency and ownership. And I want to see that take place. I really do.
Yeah, we talked about that, and there's a few different ways to try to skin that cat, but correct me if I'm wrong, and it's been a while since I really looked at the live local. Does that talk only about apartments though, or is there an ownership aspect?
It can be, it isn't specified. Seems to me that you should be able to argue, and I don't know that anybody has, but if you've got 40% of those units selling at 210 or less per each, and you got great financing with, a soft second mortgage sitting there, and great first mortgage financing and minimal down payment, but you got to live there, I think that would go like crazy in Holden Heights and places in town that have the services and too many rentals.
Yeah.
If you plunk down 100 owners or owners in scattered lots, it just seems to me it changes the makeup of the neighborhood, and makes you have a completely different look at gentrification. Because if you own the units and they go up in value, the kids benefit, right? If the rent goes up, and if you own it at a fixed rate of interest and you got the costs squared away, you aren't facing the kind of rental rate increases that are just choking some of these people, right? It just seems to me there's, like I said, a better way to do it.
Right.
So rent is a 4-letter word. Who can argue with that, huh?
That's true. That's very true.
I thought you heard what I said about sense of humor. I use it as a weapon. People will return my calls because they know they're going to be smiling a couple of times, And mean, I walked up to Sandy Hostetter not too long ago at a fundraiser. She's one of the people that I love in this town more than anybody. She's just fantastic. And I never met her husband, and he's standing right there. So I walked up to him and I just looked at her, and then I looked at him and I said, "What do you see in her anyway?" And burst out laughing because she's so cool, you know? And I'm close enough to her where she knew I was just pulling his leg, right? And but that's the way I like to roll. I think it's really important to keep a smile on your face.
Right. And I think that really helps, definitely. And you certainly are the glue for a lot of people in town. I know
Good.
I've seen your name on so many signs
Well, I
over
was
the years.
Volunteer of the year at NAIOP this past year in 23. And it's because I'll show up at the developing leaders events. You're supposed to be 35 and under. Well, I'm in my 70s right now. I've turned 69 5 times, right? And they like having me there, you know, and I'm on the program committee. I've done some of the programs where I'm the MC or whatever. And it's just such a good organization in my trade, you know, because that's developers and civil engineers and architects and bankers, all the people that are involved in trying to make a successful transaction on land.
Right.
And so need all those pieces.
Do you know the crew organization?
My wife is past president.
Oh,
and,
well.
I know most of the past presidents. They've got a past president organization that is phenomenal, that does the scholarships and so many other things. And I think commercial real estate women is just a real strength in this town.
I'm joining it now. I don't know why I never did before, but
Well,
yes.
they do a lot of member to member stuff there that
Right.
is recognized.
Yeah.
And true networking, and it's just an excellent organization. Yeah.
Great. Any other shout outs or mentions that we ought to talk about?
Blue Bamboo. Yeah.
What's that?
Blue Bamboo is a really nice jazz club in Winter Park.
Huh?
It's in the West Fairbanks area behind Lombardi's on Kentucky,
Huh?
in a leaky old metal building that somebody just paid too much money for, and they've taken away their parking. So their last event will be Saturday, the 23rd of December. And we will then be closing. But I've got them a new location that's going to become known as of tomorrow, I think, over in the packing district, working with Dr. Phillips. And it's a perfect 6,000 square foot building that was a forklift sales and repair operation, right? But the main room is that beautiful red Dr. Phillips brick, you know. We'll have a nice ceiling, stage, curtains, seating for 150 or 60. You know, they'll be able to do food there. And it's just going to work. It really is. And people love live music. So one of my passions is to try and figure out how to subsidize or support live music. And I met with United Arts a couple of days ago and have figured out how to do it so that if a club, bar, or restaurant is hiring live music, they pay, let's say, a fourth of the cost. So if it's a $400 band, they pay $100. But if that band is listed with the foundation, they would get $300 the following week from the foundation for that performance, and a 1099 at the end of the year. The big question is, who gets the 1099s? In order for it to be a charitable organization that one can donate to and subsidize and support live music, the money needs to go into the charity and then right to the musicians. And they need to pay taxes on that money, right? With a 1090. But if it's done legitimately, all of a sudden live music becomes more profitable for the club, bar, or restaurant.
Right,
I mean,
right.
because if you're having a nice meal and there's a guy or a gal sitting in the corner playing the harp, come on, that rocks, doesn't it?
It does.
It
Yeah.
just enhances the experience. And you don't know anybody that doesn't like live music.
No.
Neither do I.
Right.
We all do.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out a way to support it financially so that musicians aren't starving like normal or having to hold down a job like I do, you know?
So you know what the Central Florida Foundation does, right?
A little bit. And Mark Brewer, right? And
Yeah, we'll talk after this and
Okay.
I'll tell you how you could probably do that.
I would love to.
Yeah.
You know, because I've pitched the whole attainable housing thing to him, and
Have
I
you?
think their approach is land trust, which also
Yeah.
works. You know, like Habitat said, there's more than one way to solve this problem.
Right. You have to use all the different tools.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not one size fits all.
Right.
If the goal is ownership, it seems to me we should be able to accomplish that.
Well, we'll definitely have to keep the conversation going, but we need to probably cut it off for now. Tell people how they can reach you.
I'm Trevor Hall at colliers.com. We are in the Citrus Center on the lucky 13th floor. Thank you very much. If you show up, we'll pay your parking, and let's figure out a way to connect. And Colliers is just such a wonderful organization. We've got about 50 people here in this office. We renewed, full space. We just enjoy working together in the service of our clients, and it's a nice business.
We should expound on that just a little bit more. Do you cover all aspects of real estate, every different asset type in real estate?
Within the company, we typically do.
Yep.
We got, I think, the best retail teams in the state here. They just finished doing the Winter Park Village redo, but we've got 4 outstanding industrial brokers, some really good office folks, and then Tommy and I and our team are land primarily, and then property management and appraisal. All those folks are here, and we enjoy working together. You know, it's just a really collaborative crowd, and that if it wasn't good, I wouldn't be here. You know, it's terrific.
Yeah, right. And how much longer are you going to be working? Do you know?
Definitely through next year.
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
got too much hanging, you know.
Right.
Might have my best year ever next year.
That would be great.
But take one day at a time. You know?
Right, right.
Just lost a couple of friends to the Grim Reaper, and so
Yeah.
eat your vegetables, right?
Yeah.
Watch where you're going. Don't get that motorcycle you're lost to.
Right. Yes, that too. Right. Well, thank you so much. I really
It's
appreciate
my
it.
pleasure. You know, I'm a guy who loves to talk. That's
I'm glad. Yes. All right.